Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite warlock, practicing necromancer. And today I kind of want to put the question forth, why are you not learning? Okay? Why are you not learning? There's a couple old phrases. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Okay? The second is a man who does not learn from history is doomed to repeat it. We've all heard, okay? So we've all heard about books like The 48 Laws of Power. We've all heard of Robert Greene's work. You know, we've got philosophies out there such as Wang Limping, Buddha, even Muhammad, if you will. You got so many religious books out there, and everybody's fighting for dominance. But it's not just in religion, it's also socialism, it is the government. And there's a lot going on, not just in this country, but also in other countries worldwide. So it's not just here in the U.S., even though the shit has literally hit the fucking fan here in the United States. And people are so oblivious to it, they don't even see it. But I started taking note when I graduated from high school back in 98. I started asking the questions of why, when, how. I had a guy running for office look right at me point blank and tell me, the day that we went in to vote, we're not permitted to interact and to ask who you're going to choose, but I'm going to ask anyway. Who are you going to vote for? I looked right at him and I said, and I quote, "Are you going to live up to your promises?" He immediately replied. He didn't think about it. He didn't even wait for or even hesitate. He just, boom, replied to me. This is back when I was 18, 19 years old. They didn't even bother to fucking hide the fact back then that they weren't going to do what they promised that they were going to do. Okay? Years later, you got maybe 2 to 4 people who play tennis, and they want to add in secretly 14 tennis courts for a radius of 10 miles. Wow. Interesting, right? Trust me, a town that is 15 miles long, really was up in an uproar on that one. But we've seen how you get people in office that constantly say, if you vote me in, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And then it never comes to pass. Do you not see the lies or the manure that they spew? Do you not see the bureaucracy that is going around? I got my hands on a pamphlet called 1440. This little manuscript, if you call it that, it's more like a newspaper, if you will. But there is books out there that's called 1440 as well. Really opened my eyes into how much of a tool society is. Okay? And hear me out on this before you get off the channel or whatever. I kind of want to just put this out here. The government doesn't give a shit about the people, as long as they can make money off you. About 15 years ago, there was a guy that lived in northern Maine. I remember this because I kind of envied the guy, you know. He didn't give a shit about what was going on in society or wanted to be a part of society, but the game wardens and the government stepped in and forced him, you know, come into society. Took him from what he knew. He had spent like 15 years out in the woods, solitary. He was happy. He had everything he needed. You know, and I kind of envy the guy because you got a lot of people that say, I want to live off grid, but they don't have the stones to fucking do it. Okay? You got to give this guy props. You just got to, right? So, a few years back, you know, a lot of people started all of a sudden claiming that if this happens or that happens, we're moving out of the country. You know, I remember when people from outside of the countries would hit me up and ask me, hey, how do you become an American citizen? And it's like, apply for your green card, dude. You know, you go through the government, not some, you know, civilian. You know? And it's like people just don't use their minds. But seeing the educational system dropping down, being watered down, corrupted, to the point where it's not even considered teaching anymore, I started reaching out and paying attention to certain types of books. And the more I read these books and study these books, which, by the way, I put down in the description box, really opened my eyes. You got those on history, those on finances, and then a book that was recommended to me by a bartender. Okay? A bartender. Okay? Best fucking book I ever got, because it looked like, just reading the first chapter of this book, it's like, man, this guy was a complete fucking loser. You know, until you realize his memoir became one of the New York Times bestsellers. And it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Okay? Fucking love this book, man. I really do. Best $20 I ever spent. But it was right up there with the way I was thinking, the way I was feeling at the time. And I want you to take a look at something real fast here. Okay? My mother, for an example, you know, I'm going to kind of pick on her a little bit here. She doesn't want to go off grid, you know, with natural remedies. She'd rather spend, you know, money on insurance and go out and get medications from a pharmacy. And that's because the pharmacies are telling you this is the only legal medication you can get, but yet where's all that money going to? You know, Robert Kiyosaki himself in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or hell, he came right out in his videos and said, the rich don't pay taxes. The people do. I've seen ministers, and I've hung around Christian ministers, who said that in the church accounts, they've got like $10,000 just lying around, and they're always hitting up their congregation for money. You know, you got people on social media talking about illnesses without learning the natural remedies, like herbalism, for an example. You know, there's certain, what is called wild lettuce. It's the closest thing to morphine you're going to ever get. You know, you're not learning about fruits and vegetables and what they can do for your body. No, you're just going to the doctors because they have a degree that they don't even fucking use. It's all on the computer. Your entire world, everything about you, data-wise, is in a profile marked dumbass, because you get to be the guinea pig. You are the guinea pig. Now, this is where I want you to pay attention. To the government, or any government, you don't fucking matter. You don't fucking matter. You know, and this is why. As long as they make money off you, if they can make money off something, it's legal. If they can't make money off it, then it's deemed illegal. Interesting how the American people pay 60 to 70% taxes. And they tell you that you either pay taxes or you go to jail for tax evasion. Fraud. Okay? And so, like I said, I went out, and you guys know me. I'm well-read, highly educated, self-motivated to bettering myself and my understanding. So I want you to kind of think about an analogy at this point. You are the mule that is getting whipped in the field. You're getting your ass beat by the system so that they can make money. You are working yourself to death while they're earning money off you. Interesting, right? And the people that get fucked over, that corporations like dental or healthcare systems fuck over, are those that are on, say, Social Security or disability of some kind, right? So you would be the chickens in the hen house being pumped full of all these drugs, legally speaking, when you could pay a fraction of that cost and go get pot. Wow, why would I want to pay $150 to $200 for pain medication when I can pay 50 cents for a marijuana stick, right? And it does the exact same thing. But that's illegal. Even though they've been switching it back and forth over the last 10 years, saying, oh, today it's legal, tomorrow it's illegal. Today it's legal, but wait to the law enforcement officers. If you have more than, say, 5 sticks, and it's not in a personalized prescription bottle, then you're a drug dealer and you're going to get arrested for possession of narcotics with a intent to distribute. Wow. Welcome to American law. Okay? So think about that analogy for an example. If they can't make money off you, you're discarded like yesterday's trash. Okay? Religions are the exact same way. Religion is the exact same way. You know, when's the last time you went to church? And when I first heard this question, I actually started paying attention. When was the last time you went to church and the offering plate wasn't out for some dumbass thing? Think about it. Oh, we're having a missionary movement going to like South Africa or some third world country you've never even been to, heard of, or had anything to do with before. Okay, think about that for just a minute. Every fad begins with an idea, right? Every fad becomes a movement. And of course, with the populace, you control the mind, you control the education process. Then guess what? You own the board, right? Think about it. Christianity did this, controlling the knowledge, deeming what is considered to be of heretics, what's of the devil versus what is of God. God is good, Satan is evil. Okay, think about that. Get into the governments. Okay, you question, you decide to make a living for yourself, which is your constitutional right, by the way. You have a right to make a living. That's the 14th Amendment. It's not just the 4th Amendment. Okay? 4th Amendment and 14th Amendment clearly states that you have a right to make a living. No one can limit that. But yet they do. Corporations will blacklist you if you don't play ball with them. You leave on a good terms. You put in your 2 weeks, you stay the full 2 weeks, and then you disappear. You go to get another job, all of a sudden it's like, why is nobody hiring you? That's because they blacklisted you. You dared to question. You dared to leave. You dared to teach others how to escape the rat race. You dared to put your foot down, get away from the manipulation, the dark psychology, and go, hey, guess what? This is your labor law rights. This is the legal system, the penal codes that go along with food safety or health code violations. Okay? So therefore, if management wants it done, they're the ones going to be underneath the camera going, hello, I'm on candid camera. And guess what? These are the morons that's going to continue rising up the ranks. No one's going to report them unless you do. And even then, the state is not going to do anything anyways. So what's the fucking point? As long as they pass with an 80%, pass rate, who cares about the rest of it? Who cares if there's black mold growing in the fridge? Who gives a shit if the place is so hostile you can't even move without getting, fucking yelled at or discriminatory, towards, And then you start realizing nothing's going to change. Not one fucking thing is going to change. You got upper management that wants things done this way. You got your immediate management, meaning your shift leaders, your AGMs, your general managers, okay? That are sitting there going, well, this is my store, my product, you're my bitch, basically. If you want to work here, you're going to do it my way. Wow. Okay? So you're caught between a rock and a hard place because when upper management comes in, they're going to rule the roost, and the general manager and below is going to sit there and suddenly have their tails between their legs acting nice. You see, it's all show and tell. It's all show and tell, especially when the owners show up. And the owners, well, they don't have a fucking clue what's going on in their country, their corporations anyways. They don't really give a shit as long as they're making money. They've got their moolah in their bank account so they can go on their expensive trips whenever they want. Wow. Okay? Which goes along with what Robert Kiyosaki put out there in Rich Dad, Poor Dad about the rich don't pay taxes. And they get away with it. So, like I said, over the last few years, the last couple of years, the last 3-4 years since my son's mother and I separated, I started paying attention to things on a more detailed manner. A new detailed level, if you will. And I started following a YouTube channel by the name of Grim Hustle. And I went out and bought, I think it was like 28 of the 32 books that he recommended. And they recently put out a couple more. So I got to go out and add those to my list. But I really like these books. And then when you get underneath things like TikTok, I found some books under there that really spoke to me, and I went out and got it. One of which actually reminded me of Matt Damon's movie, to where I think he played a mathematician, but he was a custodial in that movie, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember the name of it offhand, but he referenced Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. So I went out and got this. I also got the other book called The Other Civil War by Howard Zinn. And, they're right here, so I can actually show them to you. The Other Civil War by Howard Zinn. A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. Now, I find it interesting that these books really speak to modern society. You know, you got the Constitution, right? This particular one has the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the amendments to the Constitution, and the Articles of Confederation to it. And when I started paying attention to these, all of a sudden things changed. Law enforcement will not deal with me. They don't like me. You know, my son's mother literally continuously comes to me over certain things, and I put together a package for her driving. You know, I started learning about the history and putting things together. These are the three main books that I would recommend to you. Now, The Complete History of the United States really tells you the story, and I believe that Grim Hustle, really said it best when he said, people learn more from stories. Okay? And I mean by storytelling. Picturing yourself coming to America for the first time from, like, say, Spain or England, France even. You're meeting the indigenous peoples. How do you interact? How do you learn from them? Where to go for food, where to hunt, where to fish, how to make proper fortifications, if you will. Howard Zinn really did an awesome job on that book. And I really liked the way that it was dulled down and really spelled out through a story. I love a good story. I love a good mystery. I love history in general. So then when you get into his second book, The Other Civil War, Slavery and Struggle in Civil War America. Ooh. Let me put it to you this way. The physical slavery, okay, ended in 1904, which is basically what it was fought over. Now, think about it this way. If the Constitution was done 100 years prior to this, and it's the land of the free, then why are you trying to control the populace? Why are you adding laws? Why are you committing criminal threatening? Why are you so threatened by somebody else making a living or living their life off grid? Why are you so concerned with it? If we have a right to live the way we choose, either through religious means or by being an herbalist, living off grid, bushcraft as it's called today. But instead, you're a slave to the system. You're a slave to working. You're a slave to social media. You're a slave to the government. You're a slave to religious practices. This dogma is out there, and it's atrocious. I want to kind of show you this book. It's called The Rise of the Fourth Reich. And this was a book I got off TikTok. These next four books, actually, I got off TikTok shop, by the way. The Rise of the Fourth Reich, The Secret Societies That Threaten to Take Over America by Jim Marrs. I've talked a little bit about this book in the past, and I'm currently rereading it, and I'm on page 25, yet again. And you're looking at how people come to power, and you're looking at things from a two-point perspective. The first is the false bravado of power. Because if you really have power, you're not going to go out there and flaunt it. Your actions and your words, your deeds are going to speak for themselves. Okay? But no, you got all these political propaganda seekers in the government offices. You know, I just caught a video this morning on a guy posting on Governor Janet Mills, her last humiliating news rant, if you will. How she failed miserably. Even Donald Trump said this was going to be her last term because she wasn't playing ball. Is that not criminal threatening? You're threatening a governor, okay, as a president, okay? So you're going to withhold federal funding because a governor thinks that she speaks for the Maine people. She's not even in touch with the Maine people. Think about it. You know, when you look at the rise to power and how power corrupts, look, there's no other rise and fall outside of Julius Caesar and Napoleon himself as examples than that of Adolf Hitler. He started out in the military police. He got associated with a political movement that was supposedly into black magic at the time as well. And then he went to jail for 9 months. When he got out, he got reassociated with the group, took it into a whole new level, became the head of a certain department before going into the Senate, and eventually led to him becoming the Fuhrer, a tyrant, right? Now, you want to know about tyrants and the journey from point 0 to point 10. This book here really speaks to that. Now, on Tyranny, okay? On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. This book was the first book I got from TikTok Shop. It looked interesting to me, but I was not prepared for the perspective of this. And it goes great with the second avenue of a downfall, if you will, the perspective. And it's the lack of observation, you know, the lack of education. You control the government, you know, the schools, and you control the people by dictating what can and cannot be taught to your children. And even Grim Hustle said, each war produces 3 generations of broken individuals, meaning slaves to a system. Like a child, depending on their parents for survival and growing up, I want you to think about you as the civilian, you as the citizen of your country. How much do you depend on corporations? How much do you depend on your government? Think about that, okay? Now I want to ask you, what is it about the easy road that attracts you so much? Why is it so many people today choose the luxuries of easy path workings? Everything's just handed to you. But while they're handing over here, they're replacing it with something else over here. This is what you fail to see. Like the illusionist, they're giving with one hand and taking with the other. Religions will sit there and go, it's our way or the highway. Meaning they will break you down to the point of homelessness just to rebuild your brain up into the way of their thinking. They did this in Korea. They did this in Vietnam. They did this in the Third Reich. The propaganda over the loudspeakers. Look at the church and how many times they have to do this throughout the week. It's not that they control the hospitals. It's not that they do the streets. It's not that they have their hands out begging you for more money. It's the way that they're doing their sermons. It's for revival, but it's also about you buying into their crap. Think about it this way. If I already have a toaster, why would I want to go out and get a toaster with a clock on it? Why would I want to spend my money on a toaster that can be utilized not only for a clock, but say, for an example, can also do waffles or, say, cook sausages? Isn't that what a microwave's for? Interesting, right? If I already got pants and I don't need a new pair of pants, why would I constantly go out and spend money on this? Because you're circulating that money, right? So I want to put something, I want to read this real fast from this book. And I kind of want to give you it's called The History of and Tyranny. It's a prelogue, right? It says, history does not repeat, but it does instruct. As the Founding Fathers debated our Constitution, they took instruction from the history they knew. Concerned that the democratic republic they envisioned would collapse, they contemplated the descent of ancient democracies and republics into oligarchy and empire. As they knew, Aristotle warned that the inequality brought instability, while Plato believed that the demagogues exploited free speech to install themselves as tyrants. Now, just out of that alone, I want you to take a look at what's come down here. All right, your speech is being limited. Look at online services. Now you have to speak a certain way. Otherwise, you can't have your account, right? You get an account strike, is what they refer to it as. It's a violation for sitting there going, fuck you. Well, guess what? Now you got a strike against you, right? So you get another strike, you get suspended for like 30 days from being able to post on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Okay? Hell, even YouTube. Nowadays, you don't even need proof. Nowadays, all you need is that accusation, and there's the end of things, right? So you're already seeing the limiting of Christianity, of religious freedoms. You're already seeing the violation of the constitutional rights of freedom of speech. The right to bear arms is now being taken over by cops with psychology degrees that if they deem you unfit, they can come in and confiscate your weaponry. All right, one of the newest things is by Janet Mills, by the way. I found this one humorous. She passed a bill so you don't even have to take fucking courses anymore for gun safety to be able to understand how to operate and secure a weapon. Okay? Now all you have to do is go online, fill out an application, and go, oh, you've been passed. Now it's easier than ever before. Wow. But yet you're being registered with a government so they can keep tabs on you and have a label on you going, guess what? Product 995 has added a new piece to his or her arsenal. Wow. Okay. So they know more about you than you do. Interesting, right? So, in founding a democratic republic upon law and establishing a system of checks and balances, the founding fathers sought to avoid the evil that they, like the ancient philosophers, called tyranny. They had in mind the usurpation of power by a single individual or group, or by circumvention of law by rulers for their own benefit. What have we seen just this month alone? Or hell, last month. Okay? The court of law used to be guilty until you're innocent until proven guilty. But over the last 25 years, it's more like you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent, right? It's the same thing in churches. It's the same thing in religious circles. You're classified off race, class, creed, and everything in between. Tyranny. Okay? Now, this book here by Arianna Huffington, it's called How to Overthrow the Government. You know, I could care less about overthrowing the government, because if you think about your constitutional right, what is the very first paragraph in the Articles of Independence? It says, when all avenues have been explored, it is the civilian's duty to separate from the corrupted establishment. This is your constitutional right, to separate yourself from a government that is corrupt. Okay? So why would you want to overthrow a government? Right? Well, let me see here. I want to I'm going to take you to chapter 4 here. Václav Havel, in his book, The Art of the Impossible, has called for a generation of postmodern politicians who will have the courage to speak the truth and put principle above party loyalty, first-hand personal insight into things, and the courage to go the way one's conscience points. Is this not what the forefathers did when they created the Constitution after the American Revolution, as we know it? Think about that for just a minute. Are two of the qualities he identifies as essential for a politician of the future. No two qualities could be less characteristic of American politicians' second-hand, expedient, and above all, poll-driven system of leadership. Today's political landscape is littered with ersatz leaders who can't even get dressed in the morning without consulting the latest numbers. God forbid they should put on boxers if 65% of the public strongly agrees they should wear briefs. Think about that for just a minute. Now I'm going to take you into another one here. I'm going to go to, let me see here. It's the chapter here. All right, right here. A case study in corruption, the war on drugs and the drug industry war on us. Okay, money, public policy, antidepressants, children, drugs, shootings, okay, drug money, presidential seal of approval, okay. Then you have drug companies, damage control, the FDA, right? So we got governments saying this is legal, this is not legal. Ooh, so now you got the DEA, you got the World Health Organization and stuff like this, right? Cool. FDA oversight. Okay? Drug companies, collision. You got political endorsements, profits. Legal drugs. Ooh, drug companies, government policy. Wow. Okay. All of that's right in this book by Arianna Huffington, by the way. And a lot more than that. And I can tell you that this book really opened my eyes, and the way that it was done back in the 1990s. She really went into, 1992 to 2000 area, and really went through this era of budgeting and how the government is pissing away money, which is why they're constantly taxing the people and upping the game with taxation and the cost of living and all that stuff. Okay? Just think about all that, for a moment. The next book is called How Fascism Works, The Politics of the U.S. and Them, Jason Stanley. I love this book. I fucking loved this book. And I'm gonna go to the introduction, and it's going to be XXXI, and I want to bring this to the very first major paragraph here. As the common understanding of reality crumbles, fascist politics make room for dangerous and false beliefs to take root. First, fascist ideology seeks to neutralize, keyword there, neutralize, group difference, thereby giving the appearance of natural scientific support for a hierarchy of human worth. When social rankings and divisions solidify, fear fills in for understanding. Keyword, fear. Fear. I want you to remember that, because I'm going to get to this in a few minutes. And for understanding between groups. Any progress for a minority group stokes feelings of victimhood among the dominant population. Law and order, politics, has mass appeal. What are we seeing today with ICE? What are we seeing with the FBI? What are we seeing with the Department of Justice? What are we seeing with judges are sending shit to Congress? Think about this. Appeal, casting us as lawful citizens and them. By contrast, lawless criminals whose behavior possess an existential threat to the manhood of the nation. I will get these freaking words out one way or the other. I kid you not. Holy crap. Sexual anxiety is also typical of fascist politics, as the patriarchal hierarchy is threatened by growing gender equality. Wow. And it goes on from there. But then we go to chapter 1, The Mythic Past. It is only natural to begin this book where fascist politics invariably claims to discover its genesis in the past. Fascist politics invokes a pure mythic past, tragically destroyed. Depending on how the nation is defined, the mythic past may be religiously pure, radically pure, culturally pure, or all of the above. But there is a common structure to all fascist mythologizing. Is all fascist mythic pasts an extreme version of the patriarchal family reigns supreme? Even just a few generations ago, further back in time, the mythic path was a time of glory of the nation. Look at World War I and World War II. Pride, honor, glory for a nation, right? Hell, look at the Japanese with their empire. Go back into feudal Japan with the samurai, the glory of the battle, the honor, the integrity, the respect. You know, having a purpose to fight for the ruling body, if you will, only to get fucked over in the end. With wars of contrast led by patriotic generals, its armies filled with its countrymen, able-bodied, loyal warriors whose wives were at home raising the next generation. In the present, the myths become the basis of a nation's identity under fascist politics. Look at what we've seen. Starts with Black Lives Matter. Then we have the LGBTQ. Then we got MAGA, you know, and all these movements that are coming down. And now you have to identify yourself. Think about that. Now you have to self-identify. You have to be a part of something, right? It's no longer I am pagan. I am neo-pagan. I'm a Satanist. I'm a demonologist. I'm a Christian. I'm Islamic. You know, I'm Christian. It's no longer about this thing. Now they're taking it further. Now it's about sexual orientation, the rights of your body. Now you got to come down with he, she, it, whatever. Self-identifying. When does this shit ever stop? It's the same fucking servitude time and time again each generation. It doesn't matter if you go back into the old world. Let's go back to the Roman Empire. Let's go back to King and Queen of England. Look at how politics was waged in Europe. Look how warfare was fought. Used to be mano a mano, you know, a duel between you and your enemy. It used to be about you and your enemy. Now it's cultural. Okay? It's fucking cultural. It's all fucking cultural. So now, if a kid pulls a gun on a cop, now it's about color. It's about race. Now it's no longer about the fucking crime that is done. Now it's a cultural thing. Now it's a gender thing. Look back when they got rid of Roe versus Wade, a prime example. How many people went up into an uproar over that? How many riots were done in the East Coast while the West was burning due to wildfires and shit? Think about this. If they actually stopped before Wade versus Roe was put into government perspective, it was up to the individual states to dictate what was legal and what was not. You know, you go into religious forms. What is? Let's go into Christianity for an example. Let's go 19:5 in the book of Matthews. Matthew chapter 19, verse 5. It says, "A man shall leave his mother and his father and cleave unto his own wife, and they shall become one flesh." Okay? You go back into the Old Testament, and you, like, say, the book of Genesis, for an example, and you see where Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed by firebolts. This could have been done by, say, volcanic eruptions. But no, it was God's wrath, because a man offered his 2 virgin daughters, and all the people wanted was the 2 male angels. Wow. Okay. So now you've got homosexuality involved. Now you got bis, tris. Hell, I'm not even up to date on all of them, honestly. But it's there, right? So all of this is meant to keep you distracted from realizing the truth. Okay? So by the time you get to this book, not really giving a fuck, it's basically looking at the country and going, fuck your laws, fuck your fucking government, because all the Senate wants to do, and has done since Donald Trump first ran for president during his first Trump, is to try to evict him. Even after he was out of his first term and you had that dumbass in office, they were still going after Trump. They're obsessed with him. They are fucking obsessed with Trump. And here we have judges turning evidence over to the Senate to try to help them with their jobs, which shows favoritism, by the way. Wasn't that against the law? Wow. Okay, so basically the law is only fit when you deem it appropriate, which basically means fuck you, fuck your system, and fuck your goddamn country. Plain and simple. So by the time we get into your individual rights, let's say, for an example, you want to make money, you have a right to make money. But wait, you're going to get taxed on everything in the meantime, right? So I already quoted Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I like his works. I think he just focuses too much on the monopoly of things and keeps going back to his childhood. And then to find out that he actually took this from his co-conspirators from the 1970s, I believe it was 1978, a video was actually shared with me that this entire book he actually stole and published and had published from two other people that actually came up with the background of it. So keep that in mind. Believe what you want there. So anyways, Edmund J Pankau. I probably butchered his last name. I apologize if I did. So when you get married, you know, you have assets, right? And now you have to actually document these assets with your government, with your housing. If you are renting an apartment, you have to write down all your assets. You have to, you know, write down your income. You have to write down everything that is associated so that they can know, oh, this person is being responsible and can maintain their things, right? But as we've learned through Johnny Depp's recent, well, let's go political, if you will, and very public divorce to Amber Heard, one of the key things of hiding your assets is something that's very, very good, you know, and to learn how to disappear in the process. So hide your assets and disappear, a step-by-step guide to vanishing without a trace. I loved this book, and I'll tell you why. Right up front, there was a couple of stories that were put forth. One was by a journalist that had done a piece back in the 70s and ended up spending like 5 years or something like that in prison because he revealed the truth about the IRS, the corruption there, and they basically fucked him over, and he learned how to, you know, disappear and stuff. But this book really breaks things down and why it's important to have trusts, where you can go to store your money off, like Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, let's go with the Philippines, you know, Vietnam, and a whole bunch of other places. You know, if you want to go to someplace like, say, Switzerland, where they have you can't be extradited back to a country, you know, it's always a good thing. But this book here really caught my attention because you're seeing more and more with the modern system. Okay, and I want to put this out there. When women decide that they want to separate, from a religious perspective, let's say Islam, they used to go to the ruling body of elders, such as the priesthood, and they would take an article of clothing, whether, like, say, a shoe or a slipper or something, and go, evidence that, you know, we both want this marriage to end. You know? Okay, cool. Go your own way. And in the past, it would have been, okay, here's a number of stuff, you know, that you're going to need to get back on your feet, right? Back in the 1990s, when my mother got divorced, she had to sit there and give money to her ex to own the house because she had children underneath the age of 18. Me being one of them. Okay, now think about this for just a minute. Why would a single mother have to pay to keep a house? Okay, why not just give the house to her, knowing that she is the one that's going to be a primary for the children? Okay, it's a matter of honor. It's about being a man, right? When I lived in Tucson, and I went, Tucson, Arizona years ago. I was with a woman that was a schizophrenic. She was a repeat offender when it came to lying. And I thought she was carrying my child. So anytime I left the house, the apartment, I would make sure that she had plenty of food, that the rent was, my half of the rent was paid, just so that she would have a roof over her head and our potential child. This was a matter of being a man. It was a matter of being honorable. It was taking responsibility. So here we are in 2024, 2020 to 2026 area. And now we're seeing where women want everything that a man has. So nowadays it kind of puts you into perspective of what's the point of being in a relationship when you can spend money on a prostitute and she goes the fuck home. You don't have to give half your shit away. You don't have to fucking move to another location. You don't have to, have this feuding fight about equality and have to fight for what's yours. You could always do what the rich did and do what is called a prenuptial agreement, which is basically meaning her money is hers, yours is yours. Okay? This used to be the honorable way of doing things. Now it's a long out, dragged out battle between the exes of it. So let's just say it's turning out to be a bloodbath, and it's sickening. Okay? So if you're one of those kind of guys that's like, I want off this fucking bandwagon, this book is definitely one for you to get. You want to learn about investing, learn about what an asset is, what a liability is, how to get money to work for you instead of you working for money, get rich dad, poor dad. But I would also, if I were you, I would learn, this next book I got off TikTok Shop because I saw it come up quite a bit. And there was a lot of different, let's just call it opinions, if you will, that spoke to it as being good, kind of a low risk investing in today's economy. Now, keep in mind, I've been investing now for about 4 years, and I wish I started this when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I'm now almost 50 years old, so, and I'm at that point where I just don't give a fuck about the world and the horse shit that's out there. But this book is called How to Invest $50 to $5,000. A small investor's step-by-step plan for low-risk investing in today's economy, the 10th edition by Nancy Dunnan. And it looks like this. Now, reading this book, I actually bookmarked page 4. What is the minimum deposit requirement for a savings account? What online services are offered? All types of services are. If all types of services are offered. How well rush hour traffic is handled. If there are express lines. If there are branches near both where you live and where you work. If there are bank officers available to answer questions, or if you are likely to be sent scurrying from one desk to another in a Kafka-like circle. I actually had to look that word up, by the way. First time ever hearing that freaking word, Kafka. If there is written material available on interest rates and service charges. Material that you can actually understand. Okay? And like I said, this is on page 4. And it's the institutional cookie jars, banks. Okay? Selecting a bank is the title of this particular section that I just read off. I liked the way this was written because, number one, it spells things out. It dumbs it down for idiots to, we used to have books called the idiots guides for things like computers and electronics and stuff. I mean, if you go to the mom and pop stores today, you'll probably find one of these books. But this one here was actually dubbed down, and I really enjoyed it because it really opened my eyes on different interest rates, and it really went really, really well with Ramit Sethi. His book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which is this one here. Okay? And the reason for that is because if you go into a bank, you'll notice that they have a little waiting room. They'll have some, if you have kids, they have a little toy section there that they can save up what they call bank bucks, if you will. I can't speak to every bank and what they call it, but your child, if they're under 18, can actually save up a certain amount of money and put it in their account, and they earn like this fake money. It's like a monopoly type money that they can turn around, and it teaches them, okay, this is what I put into my account. This is what the bank gave me to play with, so I'm going to be able to purchase one of these toys. Okay? More so, they have a lot of material on a stand somewhere that talks about interest rates, talks about different credit cards and different things like being able to buy a home, purchasing a vehicle from a dealership, and how to finance, and the APR rates, and all of this stuff, right? Which, by the way, she does talk about in this book, and you'll find it also in this book too, along with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Okay, so this is the other avenue of teaching Americans, your children, how to make money. They don't teach this stuff anymore. They teach the most basic shit and call it education. So when I got into I Will Teach You to Be Rich, no guilt, no excuses, no BS, just a 6-week program that works. And this, by the way, is the second edition. I must have read this book like 5 times. 5 times. And I got this book roughly about 2 years ago. I wish this book came out when I was a kid. Hell, I wish I had this book when when my son was born. This book doesn't just set realistic goals. It teaches you questions that you can ask at banks. How to dwindle down and get the best deals for you and your family. It teaches you how to utilize things like credit cards for frequent flyer miles, get free trips, cruises, flights, how to be able to get money back. And it's like, God damn, how do, feed your investment account even, and it's like, Jesus Christ, leave it to those from India to be able to do fucking deal making, like the Jewish or the Hebrews or whatever, and this book here really teaches you about the Roth IRA restrictions, the growth and versus access, teaches you about the beauty of Roth IRAs, gives you 5 years, 10 years, all the way up to 30 years, and being able to, put things into your account and how to actually raise your finances, if you will. But that's where the next book's going to come into. The next 2 books are going to come into, because if you're going to do this, then you got to think about taxes and the different tax brackets. Just so you know, you're going to need to know that as well. So to do it now, setting up your 401k. How a 401k grows Going into invisible investing scripts. There's just so much that is in this book. It's going to take me at least 4 hours to be able to explain it all to you. And it all deals with bank fees and things that are negotiating for you and stuff like that. This is one of the other books that I've been kind of going through, looking at the SAT type things, your credit scores, credit reports. And I found this very, very interesting because there's two aspects that really, the banks go by. And I found this out by a bank manager, by the way. Is you can look at, say, Credit Karma or what's that other one, Sesame Seed or whatever, right? And you may have a perfect credit card score. Let's say, for an example, 663 on your both aspects of it, right? When in reality, it is 1 or 200 points below. It does not matter. Your credit score does not matter. Okay? So when I got this book and I got to page 30, and I started reading this, and it started on page 29, playing offense, use credit to accelerate your rich life. Okay? And I'm going to read these 2 paragraphs to you. Your credit report gives potential leaders basic information about you, your accounts, your payment history. It tracks all credit-related activities, from credit cards and loans through recent activities are given higher weight. The second paragraph says, your credit score, often called your FISCO, F-I-C-O, FICO, I believe is how it's pronounced, score, because it was credited by the Fair Isaac Corporation, is a single, easy-to-read number between 300 and 850 that represents your credit risk to lenders. It's like an SAT score for the credit industry. Higher is better. The lenders take this number and, with a few other pieces of information, such as your salary and age, decide if they'll lend you money for credit, like a credit card, mortgage, or car loan. They charge you more or less for the loan depending on your score, which signifies how risky you are. Okay? Freaking amazing. And he goes on from this and from there. And like I said, I just wanted to read those 2 quick paragraphs to you on that one. But then you get into, like I said, the score report, like say 35% payment history, 30% amounts owed, 15% length of history, 10% new credit cards. And they'll sit there and go, well, you got to get, if you want your credit card to go, score to go up, get another credit card. No, you don't fucking do that. You really want to take Robert Kiyosaki's perspective and go, what is a liability versus what is an asset? How do you acquire assets? And you're stacking up your assets, which is why you're getting richer and richer. And then you got things like credit cards, how credit cards, credit scores affect what you pay. And it's freaking amazing how this guy just put all this shit in here. And like I said, this book is freaking amazing. There's just so much in it that, especially on buying your first house, and everything. And, I actually started utilizing some of this stuff with my last car that I purchased. And it was interesting because my bank gave me about 51 to 54 months to pay off a car that was $23,000. I dropped 17, dropped it down to 19.5. Okay, so I had to pay $19,500 back to the bank, and that's basically you're paying $451 a month, or whatever they set it as per month, for a certain length of time. And they will put in the ARP, they will increase your tax, and I believe mine was like 5.6% or 5.8% or something like that. just for this car because it was a 2016 used vehicle. Okay. So I started looking at assets. I started looking at um, liabilities. I started looking at finances and how to separate them. For this, I can play with through, say, investing. This one here, I need to set aside to be able to pay this off quickly. I want to get rid of my liabilities. My car is my liability. Once I get that title, then I can turn it into a an asset. You know, like if right now it's just sitting, right? I'm using it to go from point A to point B, which is a liability because I'm putting money into it. I'm not getting money out of it. So what I did was I started, started putting money into it, into the account, extra money, whatever I had left over, I put towards the car, towards the bank and paying it off faster. So this month, I turned in my last payment to the bank. At $451 per month, I had like $578 that needed to be paid off. That was it. My last fucking payment, right? And so to pay off the entire account, I had to pay like $583 something. Okay. So guess what? Not only did I get my title for my car, I paid it off 10 months early. And by showing this, that you're self-motivated to do this, you're also telling the bank, hey, this guy's a great investment. Why? Because not only does he have a great history with us for purchasing vehicles and paying the debt that is owed that we purchased for him, or her for that matter, but it also shows them, hey, he's dependable. It's like you constantly showing up at work, working your ass off for anywhere from $14 an hour to $23 an hour and having to take shit by upper management, playing dark psychology, manipulation type games. Okay? So like I said, once you get into that book, the last two books that I'm going to tell you, The Fair Tax. Okay? When you start learning about taxes and how they work, you're able to find out if you're single or married. For an example, on page 86, single, okay, the annual taxes was like $9,800. Monthly, $817. Monthly, $188. Annual, $2,254. Married can go anywhere from $19,600 to $40,000. Okay, $1,633 all the way down to $3,333. Monthly, $376 all the way down to $767. Okay, from $4,508 all the way down to $9,000 to $200. Okay, and each additional family member is roughly $3,400 or $283 or $65 or $782. Wow, right? And this is just the spending in rebates in HR 25. Okay? Look at that. Fucking awesome, right? So again, you're learning about what taxes are and why they were perceived. Going through the second half of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, there was in the 16th Amendment, I believe it's 1031, dictates the taxes that is issued, right? And it shows you, compared to what the rich can have write-offs, churches can have write-offs. Okay? You as an independent has to pay full tax. And then you got the taxes for each member of your family. What the fuck, right? So you really need this book to understand how the tax system works. And like I said, How to Invest, Hide Your Assets and Disappear, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I Will Make You Rich. Those are all good books that deal with finances. Now, the last book is called Modern Money Mechanics by the Federal Bank of Chicago. It's more of a pamphlet. And this book here, this little booklet really teaches you about the banking systems. Now, you think that the civil banks, the federal banks that you see today are the ruling bodies. The answer is no. They're not the ruling bodies. Okay? You're learning about what type of finances or transactions are more popular than those of the past. If you go back to the 1930s, you'll notice that most of the currency was in coins. Okay? Coins and dollars. And it was made with a lot of brass, a lot of silver, or a lot of gold, if you will. By the 70s, it was a fraction of that. And today, it's not even worth shit. Maybe 10, 25%, if that. Okay? Your money that you make doesn't even sit in your account. They take it and put it towards people taking out loans. They take it and they give it to other people. So as long as they have enough to cover it in-house when you actually need it. So if you put in $1,000 into your bank account, they're taking at least $900 of that out, leaving you only $100 in your account at any given time. Yeah. Imagine how I felt when I found that out. But yet they're going to jack up the rates to get more money out of you. You're basically purchasing your car 3 times over for the APR value of your car or your home. So this book here, Grim Hustle actually recommended this, and I went out and I bought it, and I'm glad I did. Because not only does it show the rates and everything, the initial reserves provided, it shows you the 3 banking systems, and not just that, but it also shows you how to, or better yet, I should say that it shows you who has the more extensive records of you in your history. It's not the IRS. Hell, it's not even your own bank. Nope. It's not even your state. Excuse me. It's actually the one the one bank that you would never expect. And that is the Mint itself. That's right, the Treasury Department. Every fucking transaction that you did from childhood to the day you die is recorded. Every movement, you can't even wipe your ass without them knowing and taking note. But it goes to show you that cash and coin is not good. Checks are no good. Deposits and transfers are where they get their real money from. You learn the difference between M1, M2, and M3, realizing it's all fucking M1. And it's like, what the fuck? What makes money valuable? Who creates money? What limits the amount of money banks can create? What are bank reserves? Where do bank reserves come from? And that's just in chapter 1. How the multiple expansion process works. Dealing with how much can deposits expand in the banking system and so forth. And it's all right here, ladies and gentlemen, in that one little pamphlet. And, when I started, I don't know how many of you actually go out and look at the world. I want you to actually think about that for just a minute. When you actually get into the world, if the government can sit there and write an order to create $1 trillion, why has each state always got their hand out? Why has each branch of the government always with their hand out? And why are churches, temples, these non-profit organizations, that claim to be non-profit, like the Satanic Temple or the Christianized Church. How about the Catholics, for an example? How about some of these Baptists? Okay, just to pick on them for a little bit. Vatican City has their own police force, their own National Guard, their own city, their own millions and millions of dollars, right? And they treat their people like numbers. You got ministers raking in 1.5 million a year and owning their own football stadiums, and yet they still need more. You got a chain of churches. They're supposed to be non-profit, but yet their hands are always out for your money, always saying, "Give me more money." You got the government going, "Well, we have to cut certain programs because they're not benefiting the people," when in reality, they're not benefiting the government. Interesting, right? So, realizing that they can just write an amendment to keep you occupied, saying, "Oh, look at us, we're doing a good job." That's nothing more than a con. That's all that is. But the biggest threat is when you take your life into your own hands and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to be the man, and I'm going to educate my own children the way I was raised. Fuck your laws. Fuck your goddamn government. And fuck your school system." Why? Because seeing how watered down it is today, just with my 8-year-old being in 3rd grade, and how they're actually teaching without doing the fucking basics, and they call this teaching, you're just showing up for a fucking paycheck is all you're doing. Where's the goddamn teaching? Where's the education for my child? If my taxes are going to your school so that you can teach my children, and by the way, if you go back to the 18th century, it was a privilege to go to church, go to school. Okay? You go back to the 17th century or the 16th century, it was the parents' job to teach their children. By 18th century, it was a privilege for your children to go to school. It was up to you to send them to school or keep them home for homeschooling. And now, you're legally obligated to have your child in an educational institution. Otherwise, the cops are called, Child Protective Services are called, wondering what the fuck's going on in preventing this. And if you're not so lucky, your kids will be removed because they'll deem you a dumbass. Wow. Okay. So this is yet again another violation of the Constitution, which is why it's good to know your civil rights. Educating yourself is your own responsibility, not a school system, not the government. They don't want you to learn. They want you to be, you're basically a tool to them. You're nothing more than a fucking tool. You're a tool to the church. You're a tool to the government. You're a tool to society. And I want to point this out. Think about this for just a minute. Like I said earlier, working, you are that donkey in the field being whipped to plow those fields. You're the chicken in the hen house being fattened up with all these chemicals, all these drugs to feed the government. Interesting, right? Now think about it this way. When you get under social media, let's say TikTok, and I'm going to use my spiritual father, my elder's words. He named a title of a video. He put this in. It was called TikTok Rot, Brain Rot. TikTok brain rot, and it's fitting. If you go underneath TikTok or you go underneath YouTube? How about Facebook? How about Instagram? Not only do you have all these privacy acts that are a load of fucking crock because they're selling your information anyways. What you put on there just to sign up for these social media platforms, you're already giving them permission to utilize it the way they see fit. That's number one. Number two, they're telling you what you can and cannot do verbally, limiting your First Amendment right. Second of all, what you can and cannot post, which is your right, by the way, to be able to do underneath these platforms. Now, look at all these. Look at all these scams that are out there. Okay, you got all these individuals seeking validation. You are seeing all these individuals out there trying to become popular. They're working way too hard at it. And there's always those fads. When you go underneath a book, such as this, this, say this, for an example, or, whatever, and they're always talking, they'll give you that scare tactic, which is a part of dark psychology, by the way. If you get the Dark Psychology and Manipulation by William Cooper, you'll understand what I mean by that. But it goes, for a limited time, you need to get this now, otherwise it's gone forever. But yet, 2 weeks later, you got somebody else under there doing the exact same thing. 2 days later, you got all these individuals claiming to have just discovered this, for an example, and that you need to buy it now. How about all these women dressed so skimpy that they're showing a quarter of their abdomen, for an example, if you're into that type of thing, or you know what I'm saying, just showing their abdomen aspect, and they're doing all these dances, these little hip shakes, if you will, dance moves. Have you noticed the increase just in that fad alone? It's about popularity. It's validation. Look at me. You got these other videos. Well, why are men just scrolling past this albino girl and not hitting like? How come nobody's asking me out? Don't you love me no more? Why do you fucking care? This is shit that don't fucking matter. Because if people actually want to be with you, they're not going to chase a fad on a goddamn channel. Have you actually looked down the, say for an example, if you go underneath the comment section, you got this one girl that's probably, 22 years old? Her life is just beginning, okay? Wait until you're 46, 50 years old, still single, okay? Then we'll talk about not being in a relationship, okay? Let's see you go 25 years without a woman or a guy in your life. Then you have a right to fucking bitch about not having somebody in your world, okay? You want to sit there and bitch about this person's betraying me or this person's a piece of shit? Oh my God. What's his face just got assassinated on candid camera. Really? Look at Charlie Kirk. He got shot in the throat, blood out, right? What did his partner do? Used it to sell his book. Donald Trump supposedly got shot in the ear. Next time you see him on the news, why don't you look at that ear? Where's the scar? Where's the bullet wound? It's not there. Think about it. All social media is, from the news to politics down to the Senate, It's to keep you in suspense. It's to keep you occupied so that you don't realize you're a slave to a system. You are a fucking slave. But somebody like me, I'm the devil incarnate because I dare to stand on my own 2 feet. The guy who lived 15 years out in the woods living as a hermit was happy as a fucking clam until you decided you wanted to make money off his ass and forced him into society. Wow. And what's the first thing that Adolf Hitler did after becoming the Fuhrer? He rounded up all the individuals that weren't going to play ball. Gathered up all the fucking books. Had a bonfire. Limited knowledge. Limited speech. Wrote an act to limit what you can and cannot say. Are we not seeing that today? Are we not seeing this? So if history is there to learn by, or as Timothy Snyder put it, history does not repeat, but it does instruct, then I'd say those in power, such as the Democrats, Republicans, and those who run the churches, are the educated ones. Think about the Dark Ages. Only those in church and state knew how to read and write. The rest of you just had to take shit at face value. Now, what would happen if the entire country sat there and suddenly woke up and went, I'm going to educate myself and I'm going to stop believing in these lies, these delusions of grandeur? Then guess what? All these senators, all these Republicans, all these liberals, the president, vice president, would suddenly be out of a fucking job because guess what? You were put in power by the people for the people. Not the other way around. You say it's a right to be an American? It's a right and a privilege to be Canadian, Mexican, Russian, Jamaican, Cuban. It's a right to be a part of that country. It's a privilege. That's false positions of power. You just want to feel special. You want to feel like you belong to something. That's why we have social media. The brain rot TikTok shop, if you will. And it is. It really is. Have you seen how much corruption is out there just in religious perspectives? People have forgotten history because everything's being watered down. Things are disappearing. You want to know what true human suffering and torment is? Get a book called The Gulag, Apalachiego, if I pronounce that right. Fucking darkest ass book you'll ever fucking read. And I spoke on this in a past video recently. You know, I'm talking the torture, the scion warfare, preventing people from sleeping, hitting them in the fucking balls, torturing them. All the horrible things that people did to each other. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about what Julius Caesar did, what the Roman Empire did. Go into Napoleon and what he did with his little war against Russia, not once but twice. I want you to think about Adolf Hitler and the Reich. And now I want you to think about today. I want you to think about the same shit, just another fucking day. And once you realize that, you're going to be like those of us that just come on here, do a video, and get the fuck off. I get people that hate me because I don't. It could be years down the road, and all of a sudden I realize, oh, I've got 103. I've got, say, 206, friend requests on Facebook. These people have blocked me because I didn't reply to them. People invite me to these fucking, what do you call it there? These pages, on log cabins, bushcrafting, whatever. And yet you ask one question. How do you make those little wooden nails? The little wooden nails. How do you make those? In your videos. Shows you hammering them in. Shows you sawing and cutting those little cross brace sections. But you never show how to make those little screws. Those little things that you tap in to lock them in place. I wonder why. Power. Right? Knowledge is power. True power, is undefiled wisdom. Anton LaVey. That man was a freaking genius and ahead of his time. Alistair Knott is another one that was right up there. Order of the Nine Angles, another one. How about the Mad Arab himself? The Necromai icon. Fucking genius, right? Things that you see. Look at the alchemists. Look at the sages and the mages. The witches and warlocks of the old compared to these watered down wannabes today. Think about that for just a moment. If people were so goddamn pure and had all the answers, then why is it that you suffer so greatly? Why is it that you don't get off your ass and fucking learn for yourself? Why are you not learning? I want you to think about that. Why are you not learning? It's not my responsibility to teach you. I will give you tidbits. I will give you avenues such as sources and references to go to. But I'm not going to do the fucking work for you. You want to become a client of mine? Pay me for my time, my years of experience. The greatest analogy that I heard once was, you're not paying somebody to come in and fix your pipes, to build your home. You're paying them for their years of experience in that field. I've got over 25 years of being online. I've got 12, 13 years in the ministry. 35 years in various different occult forms. I'm not out there pushing my agenda anywhere. I always tell you two key things. Whatever you preach, back it up. And always make yourself available to the public, because you are responsible for the things that you do and say. You are the one that is responsible. Think about that. I'm not out there going, well, I did this, this, and this. Well, guess what? Belial told me to do this. Really? How do we know he told you to do this? Why somebody else's opinion fucking matter to you so much? Why do you want to belong to something and want to work for something? Why not get that to work for you instead of you working for it? You go to an order, you go to a church. What's the first thing you have to do? Confess. Confess your sins, right? That's according to Christian beliefs, Orthodox Christianity. So the second thing is, you got to be baptized by water and by spirit. And then if you step out of line, they're going to shun you. They will come at you, one person, and then two people, and then three people, and then after that, they shun your ass. It's the highway, what the pastor says, and then everybody else has to follow through, and if you don't, well, guess what? You're fucked. Or how about you go into a temple? Now they're asking you for money yet again for, we're fighting a war over reproductive rights. Or, say, for an example, a religious right, let's say Satanists, but yet, wait a minute, we feel that our members' rights are being violated, which is why we're doing this. You see how the corruption is. It's manipulation. You want to have money for your school. You want to have money for your van ministry. You want to have money to keep your boiler, full, or your Woodstock, whatever. That's cool. But be fucking honest. Stop shitting around the fucking bush. Be like a dog and actually shit in the bush. I'm just saying. But the way I look at it is these books teach you more than what you're going to learn in school. They don't teach finances in school. When I went to school, they taught you checks and balances. That was it. They taught you mathematics. Today, I wouldn't even call that fucking math. I mean, you consider with what they're doing with my son, my 8-year-old son. They don't teach how to do checks. They don't teach how to make money work for you. They don't teach you about the banking system. They don't teach you anything about history. It's it's fucked up. This country is fucked up. So I don't know the name of the movie, but there was the guy that I believe his name was he was the guy that played the president in Independence Day, and he was a political servant, if you will. And a college girl asked him a question about what his opinion was on what makes America great. And he actually, out of every fucking one of them that was up on that stage, he told it the way it was, the way he saw it. That took balls. That took courage. That was a matter of honor, telling it the way it is, and educating at the same time. He didn't just go into statistics on various different cultures, from education to politics to the people to the housing, everything. But he got shunned in the process by doing that, showing actions have consequences. The fear tactic. You went against the system, you're fucking out on your ass. Well, guess what? The Article of Independence clearly says that when a system is corrupt, you separate from it. You separate from it. Americans need to wake up and understand their own rights. They need to understand this shit, instead of believing everything that they're fucking told. You don't like it, I don't give a shit. I give it to you truthfully and straight. With what you do with it is on you. That's why I give you I try to educate you a little bit, and I try to point you in the right direction. Outside of that, I leave you with 2 key rules to follow. Back up what you preach and make yourself available to the public. Plain and fucking simple. All right? So, Mr. Fox, 64057. Welcome. This is Mesopotamian, by the way, bub. Babylonian, Sumerian. Latin. This is occultism, not Jewish. Jeffrey, 524. Welcome, brother. Duiz Ad 5513. Welcome. Who is Sam Hades? Fuck. Don't know who that is, bub. Freck Toe Priest. Welcome. Your books are legendary. They're not my books. I purchased them and I own them. I own these books. But if you follow the trust funds and everything, and how to set up a trust fund, you'll know that you don't really own anything anyways. Hell, even Robert Kiyosaki said that. Donald Trump said that. Elon Musk said that. So, Tiger Boy, Bluey Black, Roblox. Interesting. Yeah, feel free to block if you want to, bud. I don't give a shit. Let's see. Moog Ak 5649. Welcome, brother. Long time no see. Nega Creed. Welcome. So, anyways, like I said, whatever you preach, always back it up with numerous sources and references, and always make yourself available to the public. All right? So I hope this has been educational. I hope it's been enlightening. And feel free to hit that subscribe button. Feel free to hit that notification button so you'll know when I'm on again. And have a good day. I'm going to go call the ex and see if I can't get my hands on the pups and take them to the dog park to play with them for a little while. I love hanging out with my dogs. I spent the morning with the cats, so it's time for me to play with the dogs. So my other pack. I played with the litter, and now I got to play with the pack. It's only fair. So, you're welcome, Nega Creed. So, have a good day, and until next time, I'm out.